to read. If you watched Coronation Street last night, you will know it was the episode which showed the devastating impact of the suicide of the character Aidan, played by former X Factor winner Shayne Ward, on those around him. The soap has been highlighting the issue of male mental health, particularly suicide, because it's the biggest killer of men under 45. Producers say the plot is designed to give people who hide their feelings of desperation a chance to start a conversation. We're going to show 2 clips to you now that you might find upsetting. They're from Coronation Street. Together, they last a couple of minutes. The first shows some of Monday night's hour-long special when Aidan took his own life. In last night's episode, we saw Aidan's dad, Johnny, discover his son's body. As I mentioned, some of you might find the content of this clip, which lasts for just under a minute, distressing.
Aidan! Get up, son. Get a wiggle on. You got a factory full over there and they need controlling. I've been calling and calling. Went back to mine to get your keys and... Aidan?
Very, very upsetting. In keeping with Samaritans guidelines, no method of suicide was shown, as you'd expect. How difficult is it tackling such emotive issues on screen, and how important is it for soaps to tackle them? Let's talk to Matt Streuli, who is that how you pronounce your
Streuli.
Streuli, I'm so sorry, Matt. Matt Streuli, who's a mental health blogger who tried to take his own life in 2015. Also with us, Lorna Fraser. She's executive lead for media advice at the Samaritans and advised Coronation Street writers and producers on this story. And David Brown is here. He's a writer at the Radio Times. Welcome, all of you. Matt, first of all, how do you think Coronation Street did in portraying this storyline?
I was so impressed. I actually thought it was very respectful. I haven't watched the full episode because I actually found it quite upsetting. And I'm in a quite healthy place at the moment. It was 2 years ago and I'm in employment. I'm a teaching assistant. Things are good. So I've only watched clips, but they were very upsetting. The fact they were still upsetting doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about it. I think it's absolutely vital that they went with this storyline. And it was portrayed in such a... Seeing the aftermath really spoke out, and how people had missed some of the signs, but also he had missed the opportunities. He'd made the decisions not to seek help. Yeah. Which is key, I think, isn't it, Lorna, that so many people, and in particular men, it's a cliche to say it, but it's a cliche because it's true, will not speak to someone to share how they're feeling.
And I think that that's probably one of the most important things that this storyline covers, is the importance of talking, both if you are struggling to cope, you know, talk to somebody, don't suffer in silence, there's always help out there. But also I think this storyline really covers very well the importance of talking up. If there's somebody that you're worried about, somebody that you know, if somebody doesn't really seem themselves, talk to them about it, ask them if they're okay, let them know that you've spotted that things don't seem quite right and that you're there to help them.
David, what did you think of how they did it?
I thought it was really well handled. It wasn't exploitative. As you said, we didn't see the means by which Aidan took his own life. And it just kind of shows really that in a very fractured TV landscape where people can watch what they want when they want, soaps are still a unifying force. People do want to sit down each weekday evening and follow these characters who they've emotionally invested in over years and sometimes decades.
Is it what viewers want from soap operas?
I think soaps have to kind of walk a fine line. They have to reflect our everyday experiences back at us, but they are a melodramatic medium as well, so they present the kind of extremities of things that we can go through in life, be that good or bad.
From your point of view, Lorna, how keen were the writers to portray this sensitively and accurately?
Absolutely, it was paramount to them. I think what has been particularly helpful in this case is that Kate Oates, the producer, used to be a Samaritan volunteer herself, so she's had that very relevant personal experience of being on the end of the phone talking to people in need of help. And both for her and the whole of the team, it was really clear from the start that they were very aware of the sensitivities around covering this topic and the risks, and they really wanted to absolutely get it right, which I think they've done a really good job with.
Matt, can I ask you about your own experience? What led you to that lowest point?
So as a teenager, I was a carer for my alcoholic mum. My mum and dad split up and I looked after her, and at that age your cogs are forming, so I already had a warped view of alcohol. I'd matured far too quickly, maybe not so because I'm still a child at heart, but in my later years I faced workplace discrimination. I went into an office job where I was there for 5 years, and to start with it was a honeymoon phase. They really did look after me and want to nurture me, and I was honest about my mental health, but as people left I took on more and more roles, as did our entire team. And there was a very silly incident involving a temporary member of staff, and I felt attacked, and that weekend I tried to take my own life. A few weeks later went in with a sick note, and I was called into a meeting with my department head, and he looked at me square on and just went, well, no one else has a problem. And the next 20 minutes he spent just trying to tell me that I should resign. And it was at that point I knew that even though it's incredibly hard to talk about taking your own life and the scars that we all have, whether they're physical or mental, I knew that I had to come out and I had to scream and shout, much like your previous guests had to shout to get their help for their children, because this issue isn't going to end, it isn't going to suddenly disappear or get better. It's been around for decades, and we are starting to talk about it, and I just hope that we have more stories like this. So I remember Mark Fowler and HIV in EastEnders in the 90s, and that sort of storyline, that sort of somebody who can survive with mental health, that I think is the future in soap opera.
David, Coronation Street has tackled suicide before, hasn't it?
It has.
In a different way, though.
Yeah, we had Hayley Cropper's Right to Die storyline. Ken Barlow contemplated suicide, and there was actually, way back in 1963, the character Sheila Birtles was planning an overdose. The storyline was leaked to the Daily Mirror, and they changed the storyline off the back of viewer complaints, so Sheila actually survived. So we've moved on quite a bit in the last couple of decades, definitely.
Really have. Lorna, have there been any complaints after either last night or Monday, as far as you know?
No, we're not aware of any, actually. And I think that Coronation Street, the response has been exceptionally positive, both in terms of media coverage but also on social media. We've seen so much positive response, people really pleased to see this topic covered, and I think that's largely down to the fact that they have done it in such a sensitive way. It's not been overly sensationalised or romanticised, they've done it really realistically.
And Matt, what do you say to those who have absolutely said this is not what soap operas are for? We should not be doing this kind of stuff on a soap.
Soap operas have always been about tackling things and giving you an insight into other people's lives. The thing with mental health is I think everyone has some exposure, whether it's a family member, whether it's a close friend, of someone who's been near that situation or even been in that situation. So I think it's exposing it to more people, but in a way that goes, we can talk about it. We saw it last night. We can discuss that, even if that is a metaphor for what's happening in my life or your life. And it also enables people, I think, they'll feel slightly more confident, I hope, so that when someone isn't themselves, or when you start noticing little things, just a text message, just a cup of coffee, cup of tea, whatever. And even if you're a line manager, that can, there's studies that show that 80p spent on prevention saves £4 down the line. That bit of prevention, that cup of coffee can save someone's life, and that's more important.
And that's what the storyline did so well amongst other things, there's kind of missed opportunities with Aidan from him choosing not to speak out and from others not picking up on things. What would you say to someone, Lorna, with your experience from the Samaritans, who might be watching now, who is going through a really rough patch and hasn't told anyone because all sorts of reasons why they might not speak out? What would you say to them?
I would say speak to somebody. That there is absolutely no need to suffer in silence. It doesn't necessarily help. Talking to somebody can bring such relief, you know, immediately. Just letting somebody else know, sharing that with somebody. You know, talk to somebody that you know, a colleague, a friend. Obviously there's Samaritans helpline is there 24 hours a day, every day. But there's always help out there. And I think the other important thing to say is that, you know, imagine a world where everybody felt comfortable talking to people about this kind of thing. If you were worried about somebody and everybody felt comfortable to start that conversation, just imagine how many lives could be saved. And that's what, you know, this story does.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much. Thanks
you.
for coming on the programme. Matt Streuli, mental health blogger, Lorna Fraser from the Samaritans, and David Brown from the Radio Times. Thank you. And if you have been affected or you want to talk to someone, you can see a full list of organisations that can provide help and support at bbc.co.uk/action line. You can also call the BBC Action Line to hear recorded information. 0800 055 055. Lines are open 24 hours and are free from most landlines. And you can get the Samaritans number from there as well. Still to come before 11. Bestseller.